president makes the case with that name of reciprocal tariffs that it's being done to people that are imposing high tariffs on us. How does that compare with the tariffs that are imposed on the United States?
So there's actually a lot to unpack here. So first of all, to start, it is true that there are some countries that impose higher tariffs on some of our exports to them than we impose on their exports to us. Overall, for most countries, the gap is actually quite small. I mean, we're talking 1 or 2 percentage points difference. And again, this is more or less because that we have these we have the WTO, which has helped to drive down the average tariff rates over for these countries over the past few decades. But what I think is important to note here is the reciprocal tariffs that were calculated by this administration were actually not based on any tariffs that these countries impose on us, nor were they considering any trade barriers at all. What they simply did was they took the value of our trade deficit, divided by the imports, and then whatever rate they calculated, they took half of that rate, and that became the so-called reciprocal tariff that we impose on these other countries. And that sort of gets to another element, what I was saying earlier about how the objectives are just really not clear, even within the administration, because you have, say, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent going out on television and saying, well, the goals are actually to get to a zero tariff world. So we want countries to impose zero tariffs on us, and if they agree to do that, we will reciprocate and impose zero tariffs on them. But then you have other folks in the administration, like Trump's closest trade advisor, Pierre Navarro, saying, no, actually, it doesn't matter what tariffs these countries impose on us. But the issue that we really care about is the trade deficit. And as long as we're running trade deficits with these countries, we're not going to be rescinding the tariffs. And the reason this is very unrealistic is that some countries are just simply better at doing things than we are, and they're more able to produce certain goods that we can't produce. So, for instance, I mean, I'm going to take, you could take, say, a country like Indonesia, for instance. They produce certain agricultural goods that we can't produce in the U.S. because we have, a different climate. So, what do? We end up, we buy more goods from them than we sell to them, and that's also because they're just that they are a poorer country than us, and there's really just no world in which we are going to be selling more to Indonesia than they sell to us. And another example, this would also be Vietnam. Vietnam, about a third of their exports to us are responsible for their GDP. So a third of their GDP are just their exports to us. I really don't see a world in which we are going to be selling more to Vietnam than they sell to us. And again, that's just simply because they are a vastly poorer country than we are. So I think if the goal is to try to reduce all of our bilateral trade deficits with each of these countries, I think that's just very misguided and unrealistic.
Yeah, that formula that you mentioned before, talking about the trade deficit and using that to set the reciprocal tariffs, has not gotten a lot of support among the economists of
Right.
any stripe. It doesn't seem to have an economic rationale to it
No,
because
that's correct.